With the win over the Clemson Tigers on Saturday, the Louisville football team has turned the season around.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the university, third year hosting this show. And I want to take the time, as I always do, to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Now, guys, today's episode of the show brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet if you're a new customer, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Joining me on this Monday edition of the show, it's been a while since he's been on, co-host of the Third Banner podcast, Kyle Sphire. Kyle, welcome in, my man. Happy Monday.
Always a pleasure, man. Good to see you, Dalton. Good to be on Locked On Louisville. Been on here before. Always enjoy it. Enjoy your show, man. And coming off the big win on Saturday, I mean, I'm on cloud 10. I skipped cloud 9, went straight to cloud 10 because I did not expect us to come into this game as prepared as we were. I felt like all the stars aligned for Clemson coming into this game. I admittedly did not think we'd win this game, and I'm glad to be proven wrong.
You know, it's really funny how things work with how the season was looking like it was projecting. And then you had that win against Boston College. And I mentioned that I felt like that was the spark the team needed. Well, it seemed to be that might have been, along the right track. The season, is it turned around now? We'll discuss coming up here shortly. We'll praise the defensive performance. We'll really get analytical into what Ron English was able to scheme up, the execution part of this, etc. And Isaac Brown went from a freshman phenom to a star, potentially a superstar. And we'll really back it up with some stats that will open your eyes. But Kyle, you had a thought in the Discord chat that you and I are both in, and I really resonated with this. You compared this win to the Florida Sugar Bowl win. Now, you and I both know that what you didn't mean was that it was a better win than the Florida win. But the way that we felt like, well, Louisville's probably going to lose this game, it's almost like you were just more surprised at the outcome. Now, coming off of this win, where are the vibes in your mind heading into the bye week and the final 3 games of the year?
Well, yeah, and I know in that chat, people immediately were like, now this isn't as big of a win as beating number 3 in a BCS game. And that was not what I was saying. The vibe I felt reminded me of the Florida game when I sat and watched that, because going into both games, I felt like, the stars were lined against us, the deck was stacked against us, and yet not only did we win, but we definitely dominated from the very first play, literally, in the Florida game throughout. Yeah. And the Clemson game started out, they got up, we got up 3-0, then they got up 7-3, but it did not take long before we took over that game. So your follow-up question, it was where do we go from here? Was that what it was?
Yeah. What are your vibes now after this week compared to what they were, let's just say 48 hours ago?
Well, what I am glad about, I thought that bye week was at a bad time, but again, that was under the assumption that we could be coming off of a loss at Clemson. And now that we've won, I think unlike last year when we beat Notre Dame and we immediately had to turn around and go play Pitt on the road, that hurt us. I didn't think we came down from that cloud of that high of such a big emotional win, whereas you get a little more time. You also get more time for some injuries to heal. Hopefully Ben Perry's okay. I know that was a freak thing, so prayers out to him. Hopefully, it sounds like he's doing okay.
Yeah.
Still a lot of clarification to get there on exactly what's going on, but hopefully he's all right. Maybe he can come back. Some other guys got dinged up at times, whether it was before this game or during it, getting them some rest. And then I think, going into Stanford, that's a game you absolutely have to win. You can't turn around and lose to Stanford after you went to Clemson and beat them. No disrespect to Stanford, but that's just a game that if we are who we think we are at this juncture, we have to win. But I think what it does, it gives the defense some confidence.
Yeah.
The offense did some things finally in the red zone. Now, it took them a couple of trips of not doing it, but they use Tyler Shuck's legs. And that's been something I've been dying for them to do when they get inside the 10 all year, because it's so easy to key in on an offense that only uses a running back and then throws it in a tight 10-yard window where everything collapses in. It's really easy to defend when you're inside the 10, and that's why we become so predictable. But when your quarterback can take off, that's a new element. And so we need to continue to use that. We need to continue to keep this defense more simple to where we're not overcomplicating it, and keep Ron English out there on the sideline because it's helping.
Yeah, and that's sort of the drawback of having the early bye that they had between games 2 and 3, because Louisville's been dealing with guys banged up for the past couple of weeks because they're going up against some really physical teams, and now you get that much needed second bye before the final 3 games of the season, which is very critical. As you look toward now, playoffs are likely out the window. Absolute pandemonium would have to happen for them to get to the ACC championship game with 2 undefeated teams in conference play right now, both of them having beat you. But you still have a chance to end the season on a really high note. I feel like this win, just continues that momentum to where if you can win at Clemson, what's stopping you from running the rest of the table realistically?
I mean, it depends on which team shows up. I'm glad the team showed up against Clemson, that showed up against Clemson. But what I don't want to happen, and we saw it last year with the Notre Dame win. You saw the team, of course, revert against Pittsburgh. And even down the stretch, like the Virginia game was a tough one for them. And there were some other games that at times we didn't quite look that way. And then it fell off the last 3 games of the year, starting with that loss to the team down the road. So what you cannot do is revert back to old habits, which I think before this game, not utilizing Shuck's legs in the red zone is a big one. Defense over-subbing, over-complicating their design schemes. Keep it more simple like you did. I really like the no-huddle offense, or at least a muddle huddle. That's another thing I was hoping we'd do a long time ago. I was glad to see it. Now, I know it was Clemson. It was to offset some of the crowd noise in the environment. But I do think you need to carry some of that over to continue this. So what team are we? Are we the team that beat Clemson? Or are we the team that struggled with Virginia, struggled with Boston College, but was at least resilient against Boston College? The team that couldn't stop SMU or Miami at all? I still don't know that answer. And I just hope that we can continue to build and that this isn't a one-off.
I think that this win was like the first time that we all sat here and thought, that's the Louisville team that we thought we were going to get before the season. And I do think that is the team that they are, but the team that you are and the team that, I guess the team you can be and the team you are, 2 completely different entities. I look at this win and I think that it's really significant across a couple fronts, from a program morale standpoint, a season resurrection standpoint. But I saw some fans talking about how this was a program defining win. Now, this was the highest ranked road win that the Cardinals have had in program history, according to the university. First time you beat Clemson ever. The question to you, Kyle, now becomes, how much significance does this hold for the program moving forward and not just the season, if it does at all? I mean, I'm just asking because it seems like that's a narrative that's being discussed amongst the fan base.
Well, I think what it can do in a positive light is that it can show you, like, hey, we can beat anybody on a given Saturday or whatever day, usually on a Saturday. So like a team like Clemson on the road hasn't lost a night home game since Florida State beat them in 2013, the year that Jameis Winston led them to the national championship. And for us to go in there and do that, it shows you that we can beat a hot team in their house. But as far as program defining, I don't think this win if we were undefeated or had one loss.
Yeah, I agree.
I think this would be a win where you could say, like, that catapults us into the playoffs so long as we don't trip down the stretch.
Yeah.
But because we have lost 3 games, I don't know about program defining, but what it can do, like I said, it shows you that, hey, you can win these games. You point to this game, it's just another game amongst about 6 games now against top 11 teams that Jeff Brohm has shown he can do it with his teams. He can get them up for those games. So it just gives you more confidence against those big teams. But for this year, I think it just kind of gets things back on the right track, and hopefully you can continue to build on that.
I think Jeff Brohm needed this win. I think
yeah.
he needed the signature win, for this season, and he's been, coined the upset king ever since his days at Purdue. And it's nice to see, that trend continuing on. But once again, you also have to defeat the narrative that his teams play significantly down to the competition. So we'll see it in 2 weeks, what team decides to show up. But we're not done discussing this key victory. When we get back from the break, we're going to give some praise all across the board to the defense. Quincy Riley balled out close to his hometown. And Ron English, it's time to give him some praise. You heard that right. It's time to give him some praise. We'll discuss when we come back. Card Nation, having a ton of fun on this Monday edition of the show. It's now time to tell you that you need to be utilizing 5-Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5-Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life, which is why they've created the Stay in the Fan 5-Hour Energy shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like myself, like Kyle, and all of you listening to this show. You know what else gave me a bit of fan fuel this week for the Louisville Cardinals? So obviously the win over number 11 Clemson on the road. 5-Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stay in the Fan 5-Hour Energy shot is here to help you keep fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with the 5-Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. And getting into the second segment of this Monday edition with co-host of the Third Banner podcast, Kyle Sphire. Kyle, we look at this matchup defensively. Louisville gave up 450 yards. Now, if you watch the game, you'll know that a lot of that came in the fourth quarter where
empty calories.
Empty calories, garbage time. It was pretty wild to me that Clemson basically had the football for almost a full quarter over the Cardinals in terms of time of possession, but Louisville's defense rose to the occasion time and time again. It was the best, defensive performance of the year by far, hands down, and it's really not even close. What impressed you the most from Ron English's defense on Saturday evening?
I think we tried some things, and some of it was probably to put people in position, put players in position to maybe capitalize for their future in the NFL, where they could point to some things and maybe get their draft stock up. But we put players in positions that they excel in, instead of trying them in different positions or different spots on the field. And I just feel like the mass substitution thing was like, let's platoon all these guys in to keep everybody fresh. That came with a lot of confusion and a lack of rhythm. So I think we still substitute, obviously, but I think we've simplified the substitution pattern to where it's not mass chaos. Brought the calls down to the sideline. I mean, it looks a little bit old school and out of touch into modern college football, but I'm not going to complain when something that was obviously very much broken was fixed in a way that appears to be archaic. The point is that it was fixed. And I really think the tackling, fundamentally sound tackling. We got 2 sacks on Klubnik, who's a difficult quarterback to reach, and he made some crazy Johnny Manziel-like plays at times, a couple of them.
Yeah.
And then, Maffa, if you look at his box score, if you look at his stats, he had 30 carries, 172 yards. That's 5.7 yards per carry. But again, a lot of that was empty calories when the game got out of hand, and they ran – it looks like they ran 101 plays to 59 for us. So they ran almost twice as many plays.
Exactly.
When you look at yards per play, though, they have 4.5 yards per play, whereas we had 6.2 yards per play. So our defense, they were out there most of the game, and you couldn't ask them to do much more than they really did,
Right.
beyond
It's
maybe get a couple turnovers. But I
yeah.
mean, hey, that's just asking for icing on a cake at that point. That's already tasting really good.
I was really worried about this game coming in, and maybe I overestimated the lack of strength of schedule, from the Clemson Tigers because they beat up on the teams they were supposed to beat up on. But you're talking about an offense that averaged 48 points per game on their
Mhm.
6-game winning streak, and expected like 4 points per possession, which is like top in college football, amongst the top. Dual threat quarterback that has really started to come into his own. The main thing I was impressed about with Louisville, you mentioned tackling, it was limiting the big plays. Clemson's offense, now maybe a lot of that was it didn't seem like they wanted to win the game when it came to tempo. They
Yeah,
just slowed it down,
I don't
played
know
like they
what they
were
were
up
doing.
19. But Louisville kept everything in front of them. They didn't give up many big pass plays through the air with a really talented receiving core. They didn't give up many big plays on the ground to Phil Maffa when the game wasn't out of hand. And Cade Klubnik had like 1 to 2 scrambles that had of substance. I think it was Keith Wynn pointed out. It didn't seem like they had a design run for Klubnik when Tamari McDonald picked him up and slammed him down. After that, it's like, oh, we're not going to run him anymore. But
Yeah,
I was really impressed with how technically sound they were. Just from the front seven to the secondary, it was really fun to watch. There's been a lot of criticism about Ron English, and I think that might be underselling it because there's been a lot of
right.
criticism, and it's been really, really loud. But
And I mean, to be honest, it's been warranted up to the
it has
Clemson game.
it's 1,000% been justified, but something changed in
Mhm,
this game because it seemed like Louisville was prepared
mhm.
for an opposing offense for the first time since, I'll call it how it is. Well, I mean, yeah, Boston College maybe, but Boston College did a really good job in the first half. Probably since Jacksonville State. Like Louisville's first quarter woes have been really documented. And what was different to you? What do you feel like the main changes were from Ron English on Saturday night?
Well, I mean, like I said, getting players in natural positions, not overthinking scheme, being on the sidelines. I don't know what's what they could be doing in practice, or it maybe they're not doing anything, but the tackling was not only was it better, but it was pretty incredible. Like they were laying the wood out there. Whereas like I look at the SMU game by comparison and the Miami game, and yeah, Miami's got a crap ton of talent, but a running back was dragging a guy 10 to 15 yards into the end zone, dragging like 3 dudes. And then
Yeah,
against SMU, we had guys either going completely untouched for 40 yards, or they were breaking 2 or 3 tackles
sure.
and getting huge chunk plays. So to see the tackling, I don't know what they're doing to, deal with that. I think they did a really good job of disguising pressure and also not giving up the big plays, so dropping back in zone coverage and finding a better balance with that, because it just seems like a lot of times we would either go all zone coverage for too long, and they would just teams would have plenty of time back there, pick it apart. And some of that's a kudos to the defensive line. They got a lot of pressure last night.
Yeah.
So I think there was the expectation that they would do that more earlier in the year, and they didn't at times, at which point your zone coverage is just going to get picked apart because you got 5, 6 seconds to sit back there and look, find your third or fourth option. So I think the pressure on the defensive line helped us do that some. But I also think the coaching staff did a good job of knowing when to go zone coverage, not give up the big play, and when to
Mhm.
bring pressure and throw
Right.
them off guard. So, and that's a balance that I can't say I understand exactly. But I'm
Did
also not getting paid what they get paid with the background that they have. So when
Mhm.
they can't do it, they get criticized. But if they can continue to do what they did against Clemson, you're not going to hear a word out of me, at least, not a negative word.
Really quickly before we go into the next segment, if you had to pick one, and this is a really challenging discussion, but who was the defensive player of the game in your opinion?
Oh man, that's tough. I really felt like Per Year played really good.
He did.
Uh, Ashton Gelati always, when he's in his natural position, just excels.
Mhm.
Quincy Riley had a bunch of big plays. Man, TJ Quinn might be up there because
Stanquan Clark had 13 tackles to lead the
Anquan
team.
Clark. I can't pick one. I know that's a cop out, but like our
Oh, man.
linebackers, who have been the biggest weakness of the team, in my opinion, on
Yeah.
defense at least,
Mhm.
balled out. So
They
I'm gonna
did.
give it to that position group,
That's fair.
and that's nothing to take away from the secondary
No.
or from the defensive line, who both played well. But it was the linebackers like
It's
TJ
challenging.
Quinn,
Challenging.
Watts, and Stanquan. They were laying the wood out there.
I'm going to go with Quincy Riley. From a narrative perspective, coming back close to home, a place where his family grew up Clemson fans, didn't really get prioritized by Clemson coming out of high school, was able to come to Memorial Stadium and have 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a pass deflection, some really good plays and coverage. The Quincy Riley that we know when he's fully healthy. He's been dealing with injury this season, and he might still be because he got banged up on Saturday, but he was fantastic. But like you said, it's really challenging to sort of split hairs here and pick a defensive player of the game. But the offensive player of the game seems pretty straightforward. That was the growing sensation, and now the star, Isaac Brown, the true freshman running back, was fantastic on primetime TV. We'll break it down when we come back. Cardinal fans, before we get into the next segment, you need to make sure you're locked right on to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Louisville going into tonight's game against Morehead State, a 16.5-point favorite in the first game of Pat Kelsey's tenure. I think that's pretty low for this game. I've been going with Louisville spread on this -16.5. You can check out all the college basketball, NBA, NFL odds on FanDuel, all in one place on the app. And like I said, if you're new, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And into the final segment of this Monday edition of the show, Kyle Sphire, co-host of the Third Banner podcast, Isaac Brown. 2 words. That's the tweet. Isaac Brown has gone from freshman sensation to, oh my goodness, this guy is a star and one of the best running backs in the ACC. He had a game high, or team high, I should say, because not all of his carries came in garbage time. 20 for 151 and 1 touchdown, average 7.6 yards per carry. Your thoughts on his performance on Saturday and overall on how he is turning in a really, really impressive historical freshman season performance?
Well, when I watched him, especially against Clemson, because Clemson, I know they don't use the portal, but they still get the best of the best high school guys, which means big, strong, and fast guys. He looked like he was just a superior athlete out there. Like they could not keep up with his speed, his cutbacks. I find it incredible that before Jawar Jordan got injured last year, I thought he was one of the best, besides maybe Michael Bush, maybe the best running back in Louisville football history, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Because what he was doing out there was incredible until the injury, which now people hear that and they probably think it's crazy. But you have to put yourself back to when he was dominating.
Look back at Notre Dame. That Notre Dame game, I mean, he was unstoppable.
I bring him up because it looks like he never left. It's number 25 out there doing the same things, the same type of moves, and he's a freshman. And so like it blows my mind that he already has this kind of vision and this ability to accelerate and decelerate, because you can get lightning quick running backs who have great straight line speed who don't have that ability to accelerate and decelerate and hit the hole and know exactly when to hit the hole, have the vision for the cutback, all those things. Jawar had that, but Jawar got better as that went. Isaac Brown is where Jawar was
as a freshman.
And he's there. So it's like if he Now, I mean, okay, if he doesn't get any better than he is now, he's that good. He's as good
Yeah.
as Jawar was here. But if he continues to improve, he's the kid out of Boise State. Genty. I mean, he
Yeah.
really, I'm not saying he'll be that. I'm just saying if he continues to build and by his junior year, he's still healthy and he's not struggled with injuries and he continues to grow. I mean, I don't know. And before I pass it off, I just want to say, man, the offensive line needs a lot of shot. I think that was the best unit of the entire. I said the linebackers on defense, but the offensive line did not give up a single sack.
That was their best performance of the season, hands down.
And the way they were pulling on those runs and laying hats on people allowed Isaac Brown to do what he does best.
I don't like to take victory laps a lot just because I think it's kind of gimmicky, but I will for this. Jawar Jordan, before last season, I yelled to anyone who would listen that he would have a 1,000-yard season.
Mm-hmm.
And he was looking like he was going to do that 7-8 games into the year before he got that injury. And he did end up getting 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
But I said in August of this year to anyone who would listen that Isaac Brown is the most talented running back on this team. I just personally didn't know that with Maurice Turner, who if Turner's healthy, does Brown get the chance? That's a question to be asked. I think eventually he does, but maybe not right away.
True.
Don Chaney went through some injuries, so it's next man up. But I went from thinking, okay, he's a really good freshman to this guy is a legit star. He kind of reminds me of Bucky Irving a little bit, rookie running back from Tampa Bay, who was really good at Oregon. He's faster than Bucky. The one thing Bucky did really well is that guy could basically sit back there and analyze where the gaps were. And when he gets through the gap, it's with conviction. And Isaac Brown's vision as a freshman is so notable. He looks like 3 games left that he's almost a shoo-in for a freshman All-American. But let me read you a stat before we get out of here, Kyle. I want you to respond to this. You look at the yards per carry leaders in the country for eligible rushing or eligible running backs, eligible rushers. There are 3 players ahead of Isaac Brown, Ashton Jeanty being one of them. But right now, heading into this week, he is the number 1 running back in Power 4 football in yards per carry. He's averaging 7.55 yards per carry as a freshman. Like I'm going down the list and I'm trying to find there's like I have to go different pages. I'm not even sure that there's anyone close as a freshman, and he's doing this throughout the duration of Power 4 football. Like he is.
Yeah.
You have to do whatever you can to make sure. I don't care. Give him a blank check. I'm at that point now.
I picture like UPS, NIL. I'm not saying they'll do it.
Don't steal that tweet.
I'm not stealing it. I was about to give credit to, I don't remember who tweeted it. I was going to say I saw somebody on X say that, they need to what can Brown do for you? But then I started thinking like we have so many Browns on the team. You can make that like a commercial where you like show highlights of each Brown.
Yeah,
but like him in particular.
Yeah,
you have to. I do believe that our 502 Circle guys have been in frequent contact with him. I have no doubt about that. And it's just a matter of, I think it's going to be a matter of, does he want to stay here or not? He's going to have any option he wants. So it's just going to be a matter of like, I think we'll find the money for him. I just think it's going to be like, does he feel like this is where he wants to be? And hopefully it is.
I also think that, it's going to take like these really talented young players. That winning is also going to be a priority. It's also going to be on Jeff Brohm to put together a roster next season because you're going to replace a lot, and it doesn't look a lot of that's going to come from high school players at the moment. You're going to go very portal heavy. But as it relates to Isaac Brown, he's under 200 yards from Lamar Jackson's rushing record as a freshman. I think Lamar's was 960. He's at 800 even with 3 games to go.
It's crazy. It's a quarterback.
That just goes to show you. And here's the thing about it is Lamar didn't even start all of the games as a freshman. They had that rotating quarterback room. But nonetheless, Louisville 33-21 over Clemson. The Cardinals 6-3. Bowls might not necessarily mean as much as they used to, but they are bowl eligible. Was it 4-2 in conference play? They have a bye week this week. Get rested up, get some guys back. They'll travel to Stanford. I hope and pray that's not an 8 o'clock Pacific time game, because that's going to be a very, very late night. But unfortunately, it is what it is. That is going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. Dalton Pence signing off with Kyle Sphire. You can find both of us on X, on Twitter, whatever you call it, if you're looking at the graphic below, at @dpence_, at Kyle from TTBP. But everyone, have a great day. Have a great start to your week. Go Cards. We'll see you right back here
Go
tomorrow.
Cards.